Welcome everyone to another session of the Marketing Measurement Matters podcast, and I'm very excited to today have with us a very special guest, Dr. Grace Kite. Hi Grace, nice to have you on the show. It's amazing to have you here. She's the founder of Magic Numbers and Magic Works as well. Magic Numbers is a data marketing analytics consultancy, also specializing in marketing measurement. I think Grace is one of the most influential people in measurement, in the measurement space. With more than, I just looked it up today. You have more than like 23,000 followers on LinkedIn. That's quite impressive. It's more than the three of us have together. And if you post something on LinkedIn, I always read it, and I would recommend that others in the measurement space do it as well. It's always very, as very interesting content. And so, really happy to have you on the show. Of course, we also have our other two co-hosts, Tim and Tim. Glad to have you here as well after last week's Hurricane Festival.
Yeah,
you made
sorry.
it all right back to the studio.
Well, somewhat.
Somewhat all right. Okay, cool. So Grace, over to you. Would you mind maybe introducing yourself to our audience so that they can learn how you got into marketing analytics and data analytics?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Grace Kite, and I'm, as you said, the founder of Magic Numbers, which is we specialise in market mix modelling, but we do it in a really people-friendly way. So we really look after our customers, people, and get it to the point where people can really believe and act on the findings. And I guess you asked how I got into it. Well, I've always loved sci-fi. Do either of you like sci-fi books?
Oh, okay.
Which ones? Which ones? Tell us something. That's very interesting because I also.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a big nerd. This arm is Back to the Future. This arm is Star Trek. So, which books?
Nice. Yeah, I mean, Back to the Future, classic, right? But I guess the one that was pivotal for me in my early years was one called Pattern Recognition by William Gibson. Do you know Gibson?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, he's a genius, right? This is the guy that coined the term cyberspace. But this book had a kind of really cool character who was going to try and find some baddies and track them down. And the way this lady was doing it was by analysing all the data that this bad guy was generating as he went through this futuristic landscape. And bearing in mind this was in the sort of early 90s, and actually that wasn't a reality at the time, but it is a reality now, of course. But I just thought that was fantastic. Like, what about if people leave data everywhere they go? What could you learn from that? What could you know about how the world works and how people work? And I've always been motivated by that, really, just by knowing how the world works and wanting to understand it through data. And so that's why I ended up in the career that I'm in. I was in insurance underwriting for a little while as well, and that's a similar sort of thing, because knowing how people work with data.
Amazing. Yeah, you just mentioned that on your website or the Magic Numbers website. It says data people with people skills, or data analytics people with people skills. I mean, we have this recurring pattern on the podcast that how important people skills are to really implement insights. So I think it's kind of in line with that. But would you mind saying a bit about that, because I think that really makes you stand out?
Yeah, I think I'm really happy to, because one of the things that we understood really early in Magic Numbers' journey. Magic Numbers was launched in 2021. And so there was this moment in the summer of 2020 when, do you remember, it was a really hot summer, and then everybody had to stop working because COVID happened. During that time, I was with a colleague of mine doing interviews with CMOs and marketing directors, asking them, and I asked this question, when you get your marketing analytics reports, do you act on them? And if not, why not? And it's mainly I was asking because it always got under my skin as an analyst that sometimes they don't, and I just wanted to know why. But I also thought that actually, if you could solve that problem of not being able to act on it, you'd have something that was really viable. Like, that would make it much more useful, much more viable than a report that isn't used. And the thing that they said over and over and over and over again in 100 different ways was, it all comes down to people. Only people can act on things, and they have their own issues that are going on that sometimes mean they don't act. It's hard to be brave in a business context, and equally, sometimes when you evaluate marketing, the ideal thing is to do less of something. Um, Something might be somebody's job, and doing less of it makes them feel diminished. So they act as a roadblock. And it's a human job to get past those kinds of issues and get to the point where actually things can be implemented, and then you get loads of growth using marketing and analytics together. And I always thought that was the problem to solve. So my business is full of people who are good with people and with data. And they're actually lovely. They're some of the nicest people I've ever met, and I'm very proud to work with them.
So you're pretty much saying the most important thing is also the change management, right? That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one word that you mentioned. You have to be brave. I like that so much because just, I think 2 episodes ago we talked about that marketing managers who change budget allocation, and it's not just spending more, it's maybe even cutting headcount in certain departments. They have to be brave. They also have to be a bit entrepreneurial, like really taking risks, well calculated risks. But I think that also relates to that. But sorry, Tim Krankamp, you had a question.
Yeah, how do we actually encourage people to be brave?
I think I think you mentioned the word entrepreneurial there, and I think probably there is a bit of that it takes certain type of people to be brave and to be entrepreneurial. And I mean, I can say from my own experience that there was a moment when we thought, should we name this business Magic Numbers or not? And that was quite a brave thing to do at the time. I asked my dad about it. My dad had been in banking in his whole life, and he said, I don't think people want their numbers to be magic. I think they want them to be reliable and solid. And I was like, yeah, but I think it's got a good ring to it, and we've done like the thinking behind it. That was still a brave decision to make, and sometimes has to be somebody that doesn't mind a little bit of risk to make those decisions. But you used the word calculated risk, and I think that's also really important too. That actually you don't just take silly risks; you take risks knowing that there is, on the balance of probabilities, a chance it will come good. That's our job in analytics, is to calculate and make it to the point where those risks are calculated and are clear how it's likely to go.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. As I said at the beginning, I read almost all of your LinkedIn posts, if I don't miss them, and 2 that I would love to talk about it in a bit more detail. So one is more related to marketing measurement in particular, and I found it a bit interesting that you mentioned that in high ROAS, or your ROAS might just be an indication of the strength of the overall demand that might not necessarily relate to your marketing spend. And also that coming again to taking risks or being, talking about change management. Yeah. So for example, a lot of times when we implement measurement solutions for clients, and then a discussion that we very regularly have is, why is the baseline so high? Like how come, that we have a strong brand equity and seasonality has a strong impact? So I would just love you to kind of dig into that post a bit, and your motivation for writing it, and maybe some cases where you've seen this issue popping up.
Yeah, and actually a lot of the content that I put on LinkedIn is based on data and experiences that we've had with real customers. Like, nearly all of it is coming from stuff that we've seen across several different customers' points of view. And we've seen that correlation time and time again, because for our market mix models, we have data on all drivers of sales, and that can be external things that are really to do with market demand, as well as we collect data on the ROAS that people are getting reported from the platforms. And we've just seen that correlation time and time again, that those 2 things are very highly correlated. The ROAS that you get in attribution for your marketing in a certain week is very highly correlated with the strength of market demand in that week. And that's robust across lots and lots of different customers that we've worked with in lots of different sectors and lots of different categories. And it comes from a situation where actually the attribution that people are using and that comes packaged with media buys on the platforms, it's not a true representative of how effective your marketing is. It just isn't. It's representative of how many people clicked on your marketing or saw your marketing on a journey that they might have been already making because you sell umbrellas and today it's raining. Like genuinely, this is a problem with the ROAS figures that you're getting. And I think if you're not aware of that and you steer the ship using ROAS, you have a serious problem because you look at it on day one and maybe it's raining today and you go, great, my ROAS is brilliant. So you spend more on day two, and actually on day two, it's not raining. So your ROAS goes down the tube and you go, oh no, the ROAS is bad. So we spend less on the third day, and the third day, something else has happened. And what you're always doing is reacting to this data, but the data isn't telling you a consistent story about what you should do. So you spend all of your life reacting, and it's like whack-a-mole, that game where all the little moles come up, little plastic moles, and you've got to bash them with a hammer, right? That's what you spend your life doing, and it's stressful. I know so many marketing people who are spending their lives doing that, and it's stressful because you never catch up. You never have a sense of whether things are really good or not. And you're spending so long reacting to this data that your fundamental metrics, things like total revenue in the till and profit and growth, can be heading in the wrong direction, and you don't know why because you're doing your level best to keep up with this data and respond to it. So I think it's a really serious problem in marketing, how it's currently practiced, that those things we just need to stop because they're not telling us what you think they're telling you.
Yeah.
So I think
who wants to go first? Tim or Tim? You go first. I go afterward.
I think that naturally begs the question: what can you do to get out of that loop? What can you do to stop?
I have something, because that's just what I want to say. Because I really like this post, because I've been working at Free now, which is mobility, taxis, and so on, and we really worked hard to get weather data into our data in general to just show people how your marketing behaves. Because obviously, when it's raining, you sell a lot more taxi rides, you sell more car sharing rides. You sell less scooter rides, though. And that was really, one reason or one solution is really to put this additional external data into your daily doing. And obviously, stuff like competitor pressure and so on is very, very hard. But things like weather, for many businesses, is quite important. It's not that hard to get it into.
Grace, what do you think? How we can actually get out of that, like, in loop of playing whack-a-mole, of always being super reactive? Tim just said like one way to go about it would be to incorporate additional data. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the solutions for it exist, and I probably think that most mature marketing professionals probably know there's a problem with last click attribution. They may not know that some of those same things apply to data-driven attribution and even AI-led attribution. But the solutions are kind of clear, right? Like you say, you bring more data, and ideally you get the data on all of the drivers of sales, and you untangle everything, and you say this much is from the weather, and this much is from the competitors, and this much is from the price, and then this little bit, the rest, it correlates with the advertising, and that's the bit that we're driving with our marketing. And it might be higher in the weeks when we've got more Facebook, or higher in the weeks when we've got more TV. That's the way you do it, and that's what a market mix model, a good one, will do. So the technology for solving that problem exists. What we see in many of our clients is that even the technology exists, but the organizational capacity to move is a blocker, and can be a real blocker. And what can happen is people have got so used to being able to go to their senior people, whether it's their CMO or their CFO, and say, hey, our ROAS is £5 per £1 spent. Oh, for you guys, euros, right? €5 for €1 spent. When you actually do good measurement and you do proper disentangling of everything, you find that it's not €5, it's like €2 or €1.50 per €1. And that is a very, very hard thing for anyone in marketing to take to their higher ups as so we've been doing the analytics wrong, so we've done it right now, and actually we're a lot less effective than you thought we were. And so people don't want to do that. And we do take businesses through that journey, but it takes a lot of discussion and a lot of expectation setting and a lot of process by saying, well, actually, we've made this change. It is the right change. We can see we're less effective, but here's some route to get us back to being €5 per €1 spent, really, rather than fake now. And you have to have that narrative right for that marketing department to be able to give that message to their organisation. And it's tricky. So I don't think anybody finds it easy. And anyone that says they do, is probably just doesn't want to tell you about politics in their office.
Yeah, but I mean, for all of us data people, it's much better to have lower but correct numbers, because then you can do the right trend and you can understand whether something you're doing is good or bad. And
and it's the basis for being able to optimize.
Exactly.
Like, it's if you're only about arguing about the past and your performance in the past, and having a highest possible ROAS for your beloved, I don't know, TV channel or TikTok or whatever. If that's only the goal, that might not be the best setup for actually moving forward and optimizing, right? And the lower but maybe more realistic ROAS based on actual incrementality, is what's potentially much more useful. But politics might be difficult.
Or people not being brave enough, just how you said it, to tell people to tell their superiors that the number is actually smaller, but now correct.
Yeah.
When there's new people come in, and then the new person is able to say, "Hey, my predecessor was telling you."
So, I mean, you just mentioned this, and that's a pattern we saw as well. That with new people coming into the organization, they might be more willing to change things. It's funny. That's all. We even had our sales guys looking into LinkedIn. They follow their accounts and the brands that they want to onboard, and then they see if there's a new CMO and new head of analytics for marketing or whatever. That was always the best point when they started reaching out to these brands again.
That's also why I'm a freelancer and self-employed, so I can go into companies and change stuff.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good approach. But how do you manage these sort of conversations? Like, if the CMO doesn't change, or they task you with evaluating the marketing mix. I mean, you mentioned you try to talk them through it, and maybe skip that question, because more interested in, have you also seen this evolution of maybe the average CMO or marketing person becoming more technical and also more how should I put it, receptive to these sort of new insights via, for example, marketing mix modeling or more technical approaches over the last couple of years, maybe even the last decade? Or
and I think a lot depends of what type of CMO we're talking about, because there are some. So, for example, if you think about a product that's sold in a supermarket, that CMO has had market mix modeling for 20 years or more, and that's what they've always done. But if you're talking about a kind of D2C or a more internet first approach, many of those kinds of businesses or the heads of marketing have grown up in an attribution first world, and they are really just moving to market mix modeling, given that cookies are starting to be deprecated, and they're aware that there's signal degradation because of that, and so market mix modeling has become more appropriate and more normal in those sort of circles over the last 10 years or so. And I think it also depends on the size of the business, to be honest, because some CMOs in reasonably sort of small and middle-sized businesses are very technical, but if you get a CMO in a ginormous corporation, they're not, because their job is to be a board member of the organization, and that's an organizational job rather than a technical marketing job.
I'd like to dive into another LinkedIn post that I found really interesting, which also sparked some internal discussions here. Because we like to think of triangulation of marketing triangulation, and using different perspectives as one of the ways that you might help to leverage or mitigate some of the weaknesses that, for example, MMM in itself might have. But I also found your perspective quite interesting, that it could be I think you call it the Bermuda Triangle, and that people might end up in a sort of analysis paralysis because they just start, comparing numbers from these different methodologies, and then ultimately not act upon it, which we, know and just discussed is probably the worst thing because
I love analysis paralysis. That's perfect.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that. I just plainly copied it. But could you explain a bit about that? I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, there's this triangle of methods that actually Google came up with. They called it the triangle of unified methods. And they said, what you should do if you want to know how your marketing works is you should do MMM, and you should do experiment, and you should also do attribution. And where those three methods meet in the middle, that's when you know you're doing the right things. And actually, at the time when Google implemented this, or they brought out this paper, they had just started to offer experiments in their platform. And obviously Google have always offered attribution. And I think it's really important to just be aware that of those three methods in that triangle, two of them, if we're talking about evaluating Google ads, are controlled by Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
And Meridian now potentially also the third.
Yeah, with Meridian and potentially all the third. So it's sort of like,
But that's
hey,
open source,
guys, we think the best practice is that you use our measurement to evaluate our media and decide how much to spend with us.
Yeah.
And and this is not to say that there aren't ways of doing each of those methods that are useful. There are independent providers that do experiments incredibly well, and they're very, very valuable and useful part of the toolkit. There are MMM providers like Magic Numbers, my company, which do MMM extremely well and extremely independently, and will give you a very clear read. Attribution, I am less keen on. I kind of think it probably all ought to be put in the bin, and we could just move away from it at this point. But the thing that's still tricky is that any two methods look at the world in a different way and are better for answering different questions. So we shouldn't be looking for them to agree, because they don't necessarily have for us to be certain about some things and move ahead.
For us, it's like we don't necessarily need them to agree, but what I really like about the concept of triangulation is that you normally know where each method has its, like for let's say, for example, for attribution or for last click, you know where the bias is, you know which direction it goes. Like, it will overvalue search, it will overvalue retargeting. And then you have an MMM that comes in above the credit to search that last click gives. Maybe you should probably go back to the drawing board, right?
Yeah, I think maybe we do a wrap up. That makes some sense. We also have like only 2 minutes left. But I think it was it's extremely valuable, nevertheless, except the kind of breakup here towards the end. And maybe we do in the second session, once we are sure that our Wi-Fi really works. Maybe we overloaded it with having 2 remote people in the stream here. Too much, I don't know, too much data going back and forth here. But Grace, thanks a lot for being on here. It was really valuable, and I'd love to maybe plan for a second session in some time in the future. Thanks for everyone listening in, and also make sure to subscribe to our channel, to follow Grace for amazing measurement content on LinkedIn, and then thanks for being here and listening to this. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.